Teach your children to be responsible and accountable. In this episode, I'm going to address the question, how can I loan money to my children so they'll pay it back? Now, I've been asked this question thousands of times, and I want you to understand the power behind what I'm about to teach you so that you actually empower your children instead of enable them. So get ready. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been so blessed in my life to have authored many books, most of them financial strategy books. But one of my favorite bestsellers is called Entitlement Abolition. How to lead your family from me to we. Together we're better. And in that book, I talk about this concept of how to empower your children instead of enable them. How to be able to help them, give them a hand up instead of a handout. Many times children come to us, hey, mom, dad, will you pay for, can I have? And they want to borrow money and they say they will pay it back. Maybe this has happened to you. Well, my wife, Sherry, and I have been married for more than 46 years. We have 6 children, and we now have 17 grandchildren and 3 more on the way. So I know what I'm talking about, and I've helped many parents be able to solve this problem. I'm going to give you some horror stories where it went very wrong and how it depleted the financial resources of parents who just loaned money, even though the children promised they would pay it back, but then they couldn't. And they not only lost their money, but they lost their child because the child wouldn't come around anymore. That is horrible. When you loan money, a lot of times we don't have rules. We don't teach the children uniformly, or we loan to one and the other say, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Hey, you loaned Susie this much money. Can I have? And da-da-da-da. You have to have a structure or a system to actually loan money and be able to empower them to pay you back. Otherwise, I assure you, you will likely lose your money and also your child because they don't want to come around when they have not lived up to something they said they would do. I would rather lose the money than lose the child, but we oftentimes see people lose both. How sad is that? So let me share with you a profound concept that I learned from Marshall Thurber, a personal friend, a mentor of mine, and he was mentored by Dr. Edwards Deming and Buckminster Fuller. And it was Dr. Deming, who's the total quality management engineer that transformed Japan to the quality they put out today compared to when I was a kid. Anything made in Japan was junk or cheap. And that's why the big 3 now are Toyota, Honda, and Nissan instead of Ford, GM, and Chrysler, okay? That's another story, but Dr. Deming met with Marshall Thurber for 3 days. And he had to wait a year and a half in order to spend 3 days with Dr. Deming. And he was asking for $25,000 per day. That's $75,000. It was well worth it for Marshall Thurber, and here is one of the favorite concepts he learned that he taught me. Dr. Deming said to Marshall Thurber, unfortunately, in the world today, a lot of people choose to deal below the line. And he drew a line across a flip chart in one of 3 zones. And you see this all the time. Always blaming why they can or cannot or did not do something. Blame. Or one rung up on the ladder is justification. Always justifying why they did or did not or can or cannot do something. Or shame. I can't. I was never taught that. I don't have any money. He said, it doesn't matter if you blame, justify, or operate in shame. It's all an absolute waste of what? Time, energy, money, resources. It's only when you deal above the line that you progress. What's above the line? 2 words. It is responding to any curveball life throws at you, any situation, with all your factory installed God-given ability. That spells the word responsibility. Be responsible. That's to yourself. And to others, okay, is accountability. So dealing above the line is responsibility and accountability. When we deal below the line, it's just a waste of time, energy, and resources. And we actually gamify this in our family, because this is what Dr. Deming told Marshall to do, even with a Fortune 500 company. He says, explain this, put it up on posters, and with a Fortune 500 company, play this game for 90 days, and he called it the $2 rule. Everybody was supposed to come with dollar bills in their purse or their money clip, and anytime anybody dealt below the line, anybody else could say, was that $2? If they agreed they were dealing below the line, instead of being responsible and accountable, they would voluntarily put $2 in jars that were strategically placed throughout the company. They were going to collect the money and donate it to a charity. In 90 days, the first company he did this with, they collected $250,000. What an incredible charitable gift to this children's hospital. Guess what happened to the productivity of the company? They continued to play it for the rest of the year, and everybody got a raise because everybody started to deal above the line. So we do this with our family, with our children and grandchildren. When you teach this concept, then you're going to understand that when you loan money to your children, you want to come back to this framing and not have them deal below the line, blaming why they can't pay you back or justifying or operating in shame. I just don't have the money, Mom and Dad. You're going to empower them to be responsible and accountable and deal above the line. So get ready. I'm going to share how. Now, if this is resonating with you, keep in mind at the end, I'm going to give you a link where you can get a free copy of my book, Entitlement Abolition. This has this concept and many more in it, because when you start to ask yourself, golly, how can I loan my children money and have them feel some responsibility and accountability to pay it back? You'll get ideas from reading that book. Whenever I've done this, I either have a simple written contract, or with my children, because they are very responsible and accountable, we just have a verbal contract. And so I understand what they're going through, why they need the money, and we have in our family what is called a family bank. So they don't come ever and say, hey, Mom, Dad, can I have, will you pay for? They'll come with what I call a solution formulator. And they will look through their situation and why they need some money for a particular venture, or to help them with their education or whatever. And they will show how they have skin in the game. They've come up with as much as they possibly could from their own resources. They know I'm going to say, well, do you have some skin in the game here? What are you going to contribute yourself? What are you going to sacrifice? Are you going to sell your motorcycle, your car? What are you going to give up? A lot of times parents, they think they're helping their kids by not having them sacrifice. So once they come with all of the resources on this solution formulator, and then they may be short, $1,000, $10,000 or whatever, and they never say, Mom, Dad, can I have, will you pay for? They say, could I borrow from the family bank $5,000, and this is how I intend to pay it back. They now know that. They don't even come and ask unless they have a solution to how they're going to pay it back and when and so forth. And this empowers them. Now they know that I give them an out. I have leniency, so if they get into a situation that they didn't see coming, I'll extend the terms. It's usually a very, very low interest, but you're not doing them a favor charging them 0% interest. Hello? This is the real world. If they went and borrowed anywhere, they're going to be charged interest. Now, I may only charge them 1 or 2 or 3%, but where I have the funds in order to loan them the money, I get charged usually between 2.5% to 4.5%. So I'm going to charge them whatever I'm having to pay if I take the money out of where I'm taking it, where I'm earning at least 4.5% or more. Does that make sense? Because now I can't earn money on that money. They're using it, so they need to pay for what I'm giving up. They know that. It comes in education, so you can do it in a written contract. But what you want to do is have an alternative way for them to pay back in case they get into a pickle. So many times on the solution formulator, they will say, well, this will allow me then to get a better job or to be able to do this, and I'm going to work 2 jobs, and this is how I'm going to pay you back, Dad. And it'll be this much a month and so forth. And many times they've come and said, I think I could pay you back $500 a month in 6 months and pay back this $3,000. And I'll say, you know what, take the pressure off. You want to replace the car that you just sacrificed and gave up. Why don't you pay $300 a month? And I'll give you a longer time period to pay it back. And then that gives you a couple of $100. You can at least get a car again with that money. So I am lenient, but let's say they come and they can't even pay the $300 a month or $500 a month or whatever they agreed to do. Then I have them show alternative ways that they can work it off, where they don't have to come up with the dough, but they maybe come and reorganize my garage, or they paint the cabin, or they haul gravel at the cabin, or maybe they shampoo carpets. They detail my cars. There's been all kinds of projects where I allow them to work it off, even if they got in a car accident and I had to help pay for the accident. They know that they can pay back the loan with real dollars or by working it off. Give them a way to have some ownership and feel responsible and accountable. Are you getting it? So the key, again, when you care about your children, you want to empower them instead of enabling them. You want to make sure they're responsible and accountable. You can have a written agreement, a verbal agreement, but make sure that you have provisions where they can pay it off in other ways, or that they can get forgiveness of the loan. They must sort of have skin in the game, one way or another. So think about how you can do this to empower your own children and grandchildren. You know them best. And when they realize that these are the rules in your family, what I call the family bank, pretty soon they'll understand that they have to step up to the plate and be responsible and accountable, that mom and dad aren't just this money tree and they can always just go, can I have, will you pay for? You'll also find that if you constantly shell it out, if they get into a pickle, and all of a sudden they feel like, well, golly, I want to buy a motorcycle, I want to buy a boat, I want to buy snowmobiles and jet skis or whatever before they pay you back. And it's like, what are you doing? A lot of parents have been very frustrated. I remember one time an employee of mine borrowed money to go on a fishing trip. And it was an incredible fishing trip. And he said, I will pay you back immediately within 60 days after the fishing trip. Well, about 9 months went by. Didn't receive a dime it was only a few $100s. And he comes in and announces that he and his brothers-in-law are going to go to Alaska and they're going to go on this neat fishing trip and everything. And I said, you want to incur some debt on your next fishing trip when you haven't paid for the last one? He knew exactly what I was talking about. And even though he was angry and went in and got a few $100s and threw it at me, he later on apologized, and he knew it was really silly and stupid, being irresponsible, to go out and spend money on a new venture when he hadn't paid for the last one, because he got caught up into the excuse, oh, he doesn't need the money, he can afford it. Believe me, children sometimes say, well, they don't need the money, or they'll forgive me. No, unless you provide provisions, they will think that you can be patient and be last to be paid. That's why it's very important to have clarity. Sometimes you have to reprove your children with clarity, with sharpness, and you show an increase of love to them after you reprove them. But if you're not clear, if they don't understand exactly what the rules are, they will take advantage of you, not really intending to do so, but because you're mom and dad, you'll understand. You don't want to have that feeling, and you don't want to lose not only your money, but eventually your children, if you bring it up again and they refuse to come around because they are not on good terms with you when they owe you money. So in this episode, I've been addressing the question, how can I loan money to my children so that they'll pay it back, or at least feel responsibility and accountability for doing that? I've given you several ideas. Sometimes it's like drinking out of a fire hose. If you want to learn more about how to empower your children instead of enabling them, how to abolish the entitlement mindset. Can I have, will you pay for? And then your children borrow money and they can't pay it back, and so they're embarrassed. They don't want to come around. You don't want to lose your money and your children, okay? So where much is given, much is required. And the more that my children and grandchildren are responsible and accountable, then the more that I allow them to borrow and use to start business ventures and so forth, because they are learning how to come to me, not asking for a handout, but just a hand up, and how they will be responsible and accountable. You know, in my book, Entitlement Abolition, I talk about a couple of families, one in particular, where this couple, they had both worked very, very hard to save about $250,000 to $300,000 for their retirement. They had that money earmarked to go into my favorite vehicle, which I call the Laser Fund. What is so sad is as they retired, their children began to come to them for handouts. One daughter who went through a divorce, can you help me out of this? I'll pay you back, Mom and Dad. Well, she wasn't able to. The other son saw, well, you gave money to my sister, and he wanted to get some money for a bakery and said, hey, I'll pay you back, Mom and Dad. He borrowed a few $100,000 out of their money that was earmarked for their retirement. He was not able to pay them back. Not only that, but they had to come out of retirement and go be employees at his bakery just to try to help make ends meet before it finally went bankrupt about 5 or 6 years later. This poor couple saw all of their retirement nest egg go out the window, helping their children with loans that the kids said, oh, I'll pay you back, Mom and Dad. They've actually lost the relationship with some of these kids now. Folks, you don't want to have that happen. I had another couple, and they had worked their entire lifetimes. They didn't have very much money. They had a couple of $100,000. And they had adopted several children, and same thing happened. As soon as one child came for a handout, the other children said, hey, you gave so-and-so $10,000. Then the next child 10, the next child 10. Within about 24 months, their entire $200,000 nest egg was wiped out, and they were now relying on their children for support, charity, welfare, Social Security. It was one of the saddest stories I've ever seen, because they thought they were helping their kids by giving them handouts. No, none of their children paid back 1 red cent. So if you want to abolish entitlement mentality, I would recommend you study this book. It's one of my favorite books I've ever written, How to Lead Your Family from Me to We. And in this book, I talk about this concept of how to help teach your children how to deal above the line, how to be responsible and accountable, how to come to you with a system to be able to pay back either money or by working it off. And as you do this, you'll be able to get insights into ways that you can then help your children instead of hindering them. If you would like to claim your free copy of this 200-page book, simply go to Entitlement Abolition Book. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling, and I'll cover the rest of that. And I'll fire out a free copy of this book to you. There's also opportunities in there for some of my other books and materials. Subscribe to this channel. I have a lot of educational videos that talk about similar concepts that will empower your family, and how to teach this to your children and grandchildren on family vacations with a purpose.